When my family and I first came to Cleveland, we knew that we would be leaving the mighty Mississippi and coming to Lake Erie. Lake Erie, we were told, well, the drinking water is not safe. There's a lot of drudgery, oil and things have been dumped in the water. There's a lot of plastic there, so it's not a good place to get your water from. Many of us in the community who have gardens, and Cleveland is very fortunate to have a lot of community gardens, that we don't have ready access to water. When I first started the garden, we actually brought jugs of water from my home to water the plants that we had. We fast forward to 2021, and we have back in our high tunnel, we have an irrigation system. Much has changed in cleaning up our lakefront.
The last time the Cuyahoga River burned in 1969, we've come a long way in reestablishing the water quality that the communities require. Green infrastructure has become a big component of that. So green infrastructures are essentially stormwater control measures in urban areas. We have invested tens of millions of dollars in green infrastructure to help control some of that combined sewer overflow. One on a larger scale in Slavic Village, we were able to take a few blighted properties and in its place build what we call an infiltration basin, direct that water to this infiltration basin, create a really beautiful amenity. It's an Eastern European garden look to that facility, which is part of the culture there.
So where we're at right now is in the middle of East Cleveland. Former resident, grew up here in the city, and we're off of Wymore. Anybody who's from the city, Wymore and Page, they know the streets, known for illegal activity, dumping, crack sales, and everything else, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, we're by one of the city's rain retention ponds. So, one of these things that we keep catching, really don't fully understand what the whole build out a grand scheme of things is with it. So we're just trying to get to the root of it and just try to understand why it seemed like they're putting all of them up in certain areas in the hood. We're not here to tear down, but help us as a community try to understand these goals of when we come into the communities and we set things up like this. Are we even involved with the community and making these decisions? I mean, to my understanding, from the information that's sitting around, what's supposed to happen is it's two pools. Once one of the pools fills up, it's supposed to spill over into the secondary pool, which is also supposed to fill up. But the one biggest problem I have is you still got all this trash and debris spilling over. So we're creating almost like a swampy sinkhole full of trash. And now we've created an ecosystem, and I'm saying we because I'm taking ownership and accountability because of the overgrowth. So the other thing is just maintaining.
Those are difficult projects in an urban area. Green infrastructure on that scale has to capture a tremendous amount of stormwater to begin to make a significant dent. So it becomes very expensive quick. So that's a great question in terms of maintenance for green infrastructure. Just like gray infrastructure, there's maintenance required. I would say for green infrastructure, it's significant. In certain cases, depending on the practice, it can be quite intense. It's constant. So you need to financially be prepared to handle that maintenance to ensure that the practices continue to perform at the high level that you've designed them for. Our large-scale green infrastructure projects brought their own co-benefits to the neighborhoods that we were able to select and implement in, but the Green Infrastructure Grants Program broadens that net, and we can effectively reach more underserved communities than what we have under our other program.
This looks like the job creation. You know what I'm saying? They put something here to really help, but it's turned into an eyesore slowly but surely. It's a space that I'm still affiliated with. I won't name names on that just because, of the affiliation, but to come in and see a perfectly fine field, get reconfigured off of something that the kids and the community can't even really tap into and engage with. Here today, going tomorrow. My 40 years on earth, I've never came across a flood, at best backed up sewers. You know what I'm saying? And if this is one of those things to help with backed up sewers, then we're talking about another problem, which is trash and debris that comes down the sewers.
The flooding in the community comes actually in the areas where the basins are stopped up, underneath the bridges, in many of the inner city communities, because we don't have the piping system. So when heavy rain comes, which we've had within the last week, it's good for the gardens, but the streets have been flooded.
Most folks probably don't recognize or don't see the green infrastructure that's on the landscape. We try to just blend it right in. We committed ourselves and advocated for spending a certain amount of dollars. I believe it was $42 million to capture 44 million gallons of combined sewer overflow. That was quite a challenge. I believe we've ended up spending close to $60 million. We captured 121 million gallons of stormwater under that effort, which is, again, a tremendous amount of stormwater. Not every gallon of stormwater translates to a gallon of combined sewer overflow reduction. The funds for our green infrastructure come from our ratepayers. We have about 1 million customers across our service area, so that's where we garner those funds.
This isn't something I'm doing just to pick a fight, but it's more so just trying to gain understanding of what's the point, what's the cause, and how do we transition successfully so it just doesn't create another, like I said, cosmetic aesthetic to something that's still not fixed, which is a bigger problem of just open land, empty land, and more space and opportunity that they can really give back to the community to develop on. How can we help at least spread the awareness or get more information about what these rain retention ponds are here for? It's almost like when you walking by, you see like a nice little nice foundation laid over a black eye.
Stormwater is natural, and you can't stop it. So you have to find a way for it to have a home without impacting the lives of the people who live here. I'm Yvonne McCaskill. I'm the coordinator of the Century City Triangle Neighborhood Association, which is an all-resident-led, all-volunteer organization.
When doctors were noticing the increase in flooding in the neighborhood due to the increase in impervious surfaces, they started seeing that an asthma inhaler to someone that was going back home to a flooded basement where there was mold wasn't the best solution. It was a Band-Aid. My name is Stephanie Mercado, and I work for 16th Street Community Health Centers in the Department of Environmental Health and Community Wellness.
What happens when this flooding is coming down in these poor neighborhoods where concrete has been laid over a swamp in reality? What they can't do is mediate the results of the flooding. So it comes in, it's toxic mold, it ruins people's homes, their furniture. That's what needs to be mediated. My name is Brenda Coley. I am the co-executive director of Milwaukee Water Commons. It's really a cross-neighborhood, cross-cultural, environmental justice focused on water.
When those big flood situations happened, their basements did flood. So I remember, us taking stuff out of the basement and putting on the sides, we thrown away. And people just really feeling like, what's that about? You buy a house and then there's no warning about this, and did you know to get flooding insurance? I'm Stephen Hunter with Nearby Nature Milwaukee. We focus on connecting the Lincoln Creek Greenway and the 30th Street corridor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is predominantly African American, to those spaces of nature.
A lot of this area was wetlands. And of course, what we did is we built a lot of stuff on the wetlands. And so water wants to go to the lowest point. And this is one of the lowest points. And when we had that tremendous rain, it had nowhere to go but to the lowest point. Unfortunately, there were homes there, and there was nothing else to catch it but basements, homes, because it overwhelmed the system.
The water level rises so fast in the Kinnickinnic River that it gets up to whitewater rafting speeds, and it can even touch the pedestrian bridges. So that's led to deaths. That's led to people slipping in and falling.
Well, even then, there were people who had lived in this area for many, many years, and individuals who had lived here for 30, 40 years. And because of the tremendous flooding, it impacted the foundations of the homes. Those people had to move, and it was devastating. because they had put their lives into their homes.
That's an environmental injustice. The water goes down, but the catastrophe remains.
It just exacerbated the idea that Lincoln Creek is just a sewage canal because of what was in your basement at that point. It overflows, and of course the sewage overflows. And I'm like, oh, it stinks, it's that damn creek, you know? And it's like, no, that's not the creek per se.
You know, now people look at the river, especially within the Black and Latino communities, as someplace that we need to fear. So this is quality of life.
The sewage district and the city did start having these community engagement sessions where the community would become involved in the design of areas like this, what they would like to see in it, what it would help do to improve the quality of life as it not only relates to stormwater management, but just as it relates to living in an area that's prone to flooding.
So we believe that in order to come up with the just solutions and sustainable solutions, we must have everybody at the table. So the academics were talking about it, business interests were talking about it, government was talking about it, but the community didn't have a role in that. So Milwaukee Water Commons started by conducting interviews across the community, making sure at that time in 2016 that it was multiracial and multicultural, and asked people what did they expect from a water-centric city.
We're trying to demystify and uncover and, you know, disentangle all of that for people in the neighborhood now.
People are beginning to understand the value of water, not as so much as a resource. We see it as a friend. So I think that that's very, very important that people in these communities know that they belong at that water and that that water belongs to them. They have this gift right in the middle of their community, and they have a right to enjoy it. So dechanneling it so that the ecosystem can thrive is going to be very significant for generations to come.
And there definitely is a different feel about it, talking to people in the neighborhood about Lincoln Creek, because it is naturalized and there's green and there's birds and, you know, the other animals that, you know, come through.
Last year was our grand opening where they finally removed the concrete. Residents were able to choose the style of the bridge, they were able to choose the colors of the playground, they were able to change some unused tennis courts and turn them into futsal courts. Residents meet at that pavilion every month and continue to be one of the most important voices in this whole project and this redevelopment of the river.
People want to know that they are connected and can make a contribution to the health of nature. And I think that's a shift in this community.
Overall, it's just been the power of leveraging community voice and what that does not only to the organizations that are listening to it, but to the residents themselves, the confidence that it builds, the ability to create other projects. I think that's been the beauty of this project specifically. Like, it was originally intended to be one thing, and it turned out to be so many other things and leveraged so many other investments and really looked to residents as the experts.
Any of our self-worth is in what we know we can contribute that is valued. So making those spaces, those access points, it's like, oh, what I do matters. Okay, that counts. Self-worth goes up, right? Yeah.
Innovation and a solution to these big problems of the environment, of climate. The innovation is at the community level.
And yeah, giving residents the confidence that if they are seeing problems, they are the experts, right? Like they can push projects to be more than that they had originally intended to be.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it came from flooding, right? But hopefully that'll go away soon.
Attention, any Lakewood resident with your vehicle parked in the street, it needs to be moved to a side street or parked in the driveway. They are picking up the trash today.
Bro, this is. Let it go. Heavy, man. Shit.
My mom passed away 2 years ago, and we got rid of her house, and I got some of her stuff here, including her black dolls, some of her original Barbie dolls in the original boxes. My name is Traci Rubin. I'm a resident of Jefferson Chalmers, and we just endured our second backup from the sewer system since 2014, and it would end up being our third flood, because the second time we flooded, it was from the canals. This year, this was the worst we'd had. I had 5 feet of water out in front of my house, all the way to the next block. I also had almost 5 feet of water in the basement. It affected both my cars. My Lincoln MKX, when I opened the door, water came out. When I took pictures, you could see the debris line on the cars from the water. 2014, I learned how to call FEMA, and they came out after I'd cleaned up and paid people to clean up, and they gave me $5,642 to replace furnaces, water heaters, washer and dryers, all my things in the basement that I was fixing up this house with. 2016, when it was from the actual canals, we didn't get any help, because at the time Snyder was in office, and he said Detroit had enough money and the people didn't need any help. And the money that we were supposed to call and get help with, it had run out. So we got nothing. And again, I think I replaced my furnace that year. The help I did get that year was from the Mennonites. The Mennonites Disaster Service, and they cleaned out the basement, they scraped the walls, they painted the walls, they took the paneling off the walls because I had it in my basement, and they also built a room in my basement. Now this year, this was a sewer backup again. What's very, very different is we have Whitmer in charge, and our mayor of Detroit, within 24 hours of our disaster, they were already talking about declaring emergency for our city and surrounding areas, and talking about how we can get help. And no, I've never thought about moving, because I believe it can be fixed. I believe if the state got together with the city and they fixed the seawalls, just like they've done over on the Grosse Pointe side, we wouldn't have this issue. And I know some people say, well, it's the individual homeowner's job to do it. Well, how do they know how a seawall is supposed to be? What height should it be? If I make mine 3 feet and you make yours 8 feet, are we still stopping the water? This is the Tiger Dam that the city installed, or state installed. After they had a commission they put together, they decided this would be the best thing to stop the water for right now, as a stopgap measure until a permanent solution could come up. And as you can see, starting here with all the sand, none of this was here. This is all from the water. And we've had different people try to help us, like Joe Tate in the neighborhood. He's the one that helped bring the commission out here. So he tried to help us. Like I said, this is what they've done so far, but we need a permanent solution of the state coming in and putting in the seawalls. And then if you can look right across, there's our answer. Instead of, whoever's footing the bill, the $1 million they put in for the different commissions to figure out what they want, the $3 million that was spent on the Tiger Dam as a stopgap, what's right across the water is what we need. That's what Grosse Pointe had to do years ago, so their streets and houses weren't flooded out. We need the same thing done. If that was done all along this riverfront from Jefferson to the water, we wouldn't have any more problems. And we wouldn't be, the FEMA wouldn't be trying to reclassify us as a flood zone where we all would need extra insurance over here. People are barely holding on. They're having to spend thousands of dollars to fix this. And then if it doesn't get fixed, we have to pay more for the flood insurance. Come on, state, let's just fix it. The last flood, most of the water came up this way, and it came in the house this way, and you could just see it coming through the walls on this front part of the house, coming along the basement floor, and then all this was flooded, so the water just went in right here. And then I've had to spend money having the basement cleaned 3 times, because you have to get all the water out. And like I said, the flood from 2014, that was the sewer. So you had to have everything cleaned, everything dried, all of my possessions. I had a finished basement, furniture, everything down there, throw everything out. Same thing in 2016. In 2016, I had to have it cleaned again. I would say 60% more people are affected. You got whole cities like the Grosse Pointe. We're one street over from Grosse Pointe, and you had a whole city over there affected. I had friends who lived there. They sent me pictures. So I think help is going to come because more people are affected. You have more people with more money who are affected, $1 million homes who are affected instead of just us Detroit people. So you think that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So that's a lot more noise. We're all just getting back from COVID, from all the money I lost in 2020. You know, just starting to get stuff going back together again. Here's another loss, you know. But I can say, even through all that, it's okay, because I'm still here.